Howdy folks, Sauber here. Welcome back to the channel. So in this video I am going to highlight an awesome custom battle that I got to be a part of with Phly Daily, aka Phly, where we took almost 63 L3 light tank destroyers to see if we could kill a mouse. Heavy tank, super heavy tank. It's definitely going to be interesting. In this video, I'm going to talk about how fun that battle was and how it would be really cool if we could get some more, like, weekend events like this that are hosted officially by War Thunder. But before we get into it, I want to discuss a little bit about a recent developer Q&A that they did with War Thunder Chief Content Officer? No, Chief Creation Officer, I think. CCO. I think that's right. But if you want to skip to the gameplay with the custom battle, you are welcome to do so. I will put a timestamp in the description below. But if you want to stick around for my examination of the Q&A, feel free to stick around here. So the following footage is basically a brief Q&A that Keyrail talked about in regards to the Battlefield Engineering event and vehicle repair costs and balance. So without further ado, let's get into it here.
Makes sense. And second question, second most liked question on the website is by Kasim Krab. I have the toughest question of all. Well, we'll see to that. Why is it even whenever the community says they don't like something, you guys still do it anyways and make it worse than before? The field engineer events just look like a blatant cash grab and extortion scheme from our end. Why do you guys continue to use repair cost as a balancing factor when it's clear the community wants that gone?
Stop the tape. Okay, so I'm not focusing so much on the part where it says, why do you add stuff that we don't want? Because we know that's not entirely accurate. They don't try to add stuff that we don't want. They try their best to add stuff that we do want, so there's not much to say about that. But what there is to say is regarding the Battlefield Engineer event and just a small highlight on the stuff with repair costs, starting with the Battlefield Engineer event. Let's resume the tape.
The field engineer event. So the field all events are basically not mandatory. They are optional. So
well, that is true. That is true.
We are not. Sometimes we are not satisfied with, for example, with players' feedback and their results. For example, last field engineer. Not all, but last field engineer event have some things that we better change, and we will do. But all events are optional. You are not mandatory, not
obliged.
So don't play. So.
Oh my gosh.
But we are making them also for some players. There are players who are playing much more than other players, and if you are making something that's easy to get for players that are playing, let's say 4 hours a week, then and it makes completely like a automatically gain for players who are playing 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
So
okay, stop the tape. So he made the modest point in saying, like, the events are not mandatory; they're optional. But I think the main issue was when it was like, you don't like it, don't play it. I don't think that was what the guy that asked the question was trying to say. I think he was trying to make the point, like, for example, when I first heard of the Battlefield Engineer event, goodness, was it this year or last year? Man, I can't remember. But basically I thought, yeah, this sounds like a decent idea. And then when I found out what it was like, yeah, no. The main reason I didn't like it, and I'm sure other people didn't like it, was because, make the event more about skill, like helping your teammates, getting good scores in the game, not essentially RNG. Like, hope you get this part, but you get that part instead. Instead of making it more about luck and time, make it more about skill and having fun. It's not necessarily about making it easy or hard. Just make it enjoyable, like worth the time you spend. And at the end of the day, I'm not saying this isn't an option already, but I say continue to make this an option. Give us the option to buy the vehicles at once the event is over. That's how I got the P59 error comment, the VFW, the I-180S, and a handful of other vehicles. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, resume the tape.
Why do guys continue to use repair cost as balancing factor? We are not using repair cost as balancing factor.
Okay.
Repair, or what it depend, what means balancing factor. Repair cost is something that is in balance with the reward risk, rewards and risk. So
Yeah.
if you're making something that is completely otherwise, there will be vehicles that are they are always vehicles that are less risky. And
Okay.
playing on them, you will get if all rewards will be the same and repair cost will be the same. It means that you're playing on them, you will get more than you are playing on other vehicles. So until you get a reward for something like a spawn, I don't know. So
I think he meant SPAA.
Balance. So you are playing on a vehicle that gets more, can get more. Or gets more in some players' hands than other vehicles. You get more repair cost. So it's to make a game balance and what vehicle types do you see in the game, because otherwise there will be lots of players that prefer to play on a more less risky in terms of reward or more or other way. So it will reduce variety of the vehicles in the game.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. The next one.
Okay, I think that summed it up pretty much it. So, at this point, I'm really not entirely sure what to think about that. So, I'm gonna leave... Well, I am gonna give my opinion on it, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna let you decide. Do you think that what they say is true? That is, that repair costs are not used to balance vehicles, kind of like how battle rankings are in tiers. Or do you see it the way I do, in that there is a possibility that it could be used, but not to the extent that one might think? In other words, I think that no, repair costs are indeed used to balance other vehicles, just not to the extremity that some people might like to say. Because, I don't know, this is a tough one. And I struggled on it a little bit in my last video, because when you think about it, like, I'm trying to think of a strong vehicle, like, let's say the M1A2 Abrams. It, along with the other Abrams tanks, got their repair costs increased. Heck, even the XM803 had its repair cost increased. But I'm not going to delve too deeply into why. But the thing is, as good as the M1A2 is, now don't get me wrong, I don't have it yet at the time of the making of this video, I'm still grinding it. I think I'm going to get it, assuming if it goes on sale on the Christmas sale later this month, but we'll just have to wait and see. But at the end of the day, just about any vehicle, not all vehicles, but most vehicles can destroy an M1A2 Abrams. Even a T-34-76 could, if you aimed for the lower side of the hull, you know, right side or left side, or even at the very rear of the turret. Now, obviously, you wouldn't face a T-34-76 normally in a real battle, but okay, let's go on a more realistic note. A T-72A. Not really the best counter to the M1A2, but T-72A could kill an M1A2 easy, if you aim for the right spots, especially if you flank it. But, on another note, M1A2 could be destroyed in other, more simple ways. A helicopter with ATGMs, a KA-50 for example. A jet bomber could take it out with bombs or rockets. The thing is, my point being is that none of these vehicles in War Thunder are invincible. So, at the end of the day, one way or another they can be destroyed. So the factor of risk-reward is a bit of a tough one. Because you look at some vehicles where they may be good, but at the end of the day, there's still vehicles that can be taken out. I remember when the Object 906 used to cost a ridiculous, what was it? I think it was like 14,000 to repair, and then they lowered it sometime later, but eventually they lowered it. It was no longer, I guess, worth 14,000 silver to repair, or something like that. But another factor you have to keep in mind is that, especially in Tank RB, one vehicle's repair cost might be somewhat affordable, but if you have multiple vehicles in your lineup, that's going to add up. It's like back when both the Leopard 2A4 and Leopard 2A5 used to cost 20,000 silver to repair. If I were to take them both out in an RB match and die in both of them, even if I got a decent score, chances are I would lose a minimum of 40,000 silver. Crazy, right? And even if you did perform well, you may not have gotten a decent reward. Because, you know, War Thunder has its way of, you might think you've done decently, but at the end of the day you simply did not, for various reasons. And then last, but certainly not least, sometimes it comes down to, like, if a vehicle's repair cost is too high, it'll get to the point where it's like, what's the point of playing that vehicle? Which, I'm not saying this is 100% true, but it could contribute to that factor of repair costs being used to balance vehicles. If a certain vehicle is so good and so popular, not just popular, and its repair cost is increased to the point where it's no longer profitable to play, then less people will play it. Now, I'm not going to go into specifics, but in my honest opinion, I think that is a notable problem at top tier. Because, especially when you compare it with even some lower ranked vehicles. Like, for example, like if I played my M1A1 or my M1A2, if I had it, which at the time of the making of this video, I do not yet have it. If I played in both of them, I would lose quite a bit of silver, and that... What's the term? I can't think of it. Deficit. Yeah, deficit. It would get to the point of, what's the point of playing those vehicles? I mean, there are other vehicles that, while they're not as interesting as the set vehicle, they're more economical to play, so what's the point? You know? Like, for a while, I was playing Russian 8.3 because it wasn't earning a ton of silver, but it was doing modestly, and then, most recently, I was playing the XM1 Abrams. Which, sure, I would be rather playing the M1A1 or the other Abrams tanks, but the XM1 is decent for its BR, especially now that it no longer gets sucked up to 10.3. It does get 10.0 every once in a while, but man, do you get 9.0 a lot. And I know what some of you might be thinking, well, yeah, Sauber, you're getting the pay-to-win side. And to be honest, I really don't see it that way. Let me explain why. In one of the battle, or some of the battles that were not recorded, that I had played after recording was done for my previous video with the MBT-70 and XM1, one battle I was playing, and I guess I wasn't paying attention, and I accidentally took the MBT-70 as the first vehicle, whereas usually I play it as my secondary vehicle. And keep in mind, we mostly had British and Japanese tanks on our team. We literally only had 2 XM1s that game. The rest were other vehicles. There was one other MBT-70 besides myself, but he got taken out early on. I played around in my MBT-70 and I was able to get 5 tanks destroyed. I would have gotten a 6th one, but unfortunately it didn't count because the match was already over. Case in point, the XM1, as good as it is, it's not necessarily a pay-to-win tank. And if you remember, also from my previous video, I had gotten destroyed early on in my XM1, but I was able to do decently in my MBT-70. So I think what comes down to it is, you know, the matches being consistent in the sense that you get certain factions on your team. I keep saying factions instead of nations, but you get the idea. My concluding note is that I really don't think the XM1 is simply paid to win. I mean, sure, It does have good silver reward, modest RP reward. It could be better, but it's modest. Silver is out of this world. But I'll leave it at that. So in the end, if those vehicles can have, even like the MBT-70, have a modest repair cost and excellent performance, why can't the same be said for other vehicles? Not saying that the M1 Abrams should get the best repair cost possible. I'm just using that as a point to where other vehicles could get similar treatment. Cough, cough, the French tanks. Anyone remember when the AMX-50, I think it was the AMX-50, not the Sorbase, or however you say it, not the heavy tank, but the medium tank, the Lorraine, that's a better one. I think the Lorraine at one point was like 21,000 silver to repair, if I recall correctly. Point being, those vehicles are modest, but they do have a good reload. But they have the worst gun stabilization of any other vehicle, simply because they have the, forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, the oscillating turret? Yeah, I think that's what it is. But at this point, I think I've made my point clear. Now, at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide for yourself. I'm just saying my opinion. If you think otherwise, cool. Maybe you notice something, maybe you know something I don't know. But in my honest and humble opinion, I think repair costs are indeed used to balance vehicles, for better or worse. They might say otherwise, but why they would say otherwise, I don't know. I'm not going to meddle in theories or speculations in that regard. I'm just stating my opinion about the repair costs. So yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for listening to that part. I apologize if you're like, ugh, Salver's talking about repair costs again. I just, with the new, not necessarily new information I got, but revisiting that developer Q&A made me realize, you know, there is some more to talk about in that regard. But I'll go ahead and get back to the event that you see here, the custom battle that we played with Phly. I have to admit, it was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was quite a blast. And to be honest, I really wish that War Thunder could do some more, I guess you could call them coffee break events. If you've played Gran Turismo 5 or 6, you know what I'm talking about. The coffee break events, where in Gran Turismo, if you did the license, if I recall correctly, because it has been a while, so I apologize if I'm getting some details wrong, but during the license, or not the licenses, well, I guess they had them for the licenses too, you know, where you do the different tasks to get your driver's license. For the different races, you had coffee break events, which had different events. Like, I think one of them was racing the same, I think it was a minivan, racing minivans against each other, that sort of thing, or something like that, or doing go-karts on a freeway, that sort of thing. But basically the point being was that they were just different events. They were different than what you would usually play. And the thing is, War Thunder used to do an assortment of different events like that. I'm not, at the time of the making of this video, which is the 8th of December 2019, I'm really not sure why there haven't been a lot lately. There's been a few, but not a whole lot as there used to be. But do any of y'all remember, well, I know a number of you all remember the Battle Royale event, so what's another one? Oh yeah, the Floats event. For those of you who don't know what the Floats event was, just in case. Oh, and to deviate a little, I think we got a little laggy there. We were like jumping back and forth. It was really weird. And yes, I decided to take my lunchbox out just to play around, because I saw other people, including Benny and Collusion, taking out their lunchbox tank, which is this vehicle here, and I was like, heck, I'm going to take my lunchbox. I want to get to Phly before the battle's over. And it was definitely worth it. But anyway, going back on topic, the Floats event, in case you don't know what it was, this was long before they added ships or PT boats. What you would do is you would take a float plane, which was usually a bomber like the H-6K, and you would fly them to capture points to try to land on the water and capture the points. And if I recall correctly, you would also attempt to take out the enemy's aircraft carriers, which I think were their resupply bases, so that if you lost your carriers, not only would you slowly lose as not spawn points, tickets, sorry, you would also not be able to repair, but you could obviously respawn. I will be honest, I don't remember the details too well, but I do remember it was a ton of fun for its time, and I definitely would be willing to play it again if they hosted it on the events menu. But, and this kind of brings back, I don't think I highlighted it on the little developer Q&A video that I briefly highlighted, but one other thing they mentioned, I think it was Phly's question, he asked, what about more game modes? And without going into too much detail, they basically said, you know, we don't want to divide the player base, because if there's too many options, then there's not going to be enough players for each one, basically. And in a way, it does make sense. But what doesn't make sense is, why don't they try to do at least one game mode? And when I say game mode, I don't mean like RB, arcade, or simulator. I'm talking about, like, for example, battle, break, domination, conquest, that sort of thing. In fact, break actually isn't a game mode anymore, but I'll get into that in a moment. But in my honest opinion, I think when they say that, like, for example, we don't want to divide the player base, is this. Now, I'm not saying this is 100% certain. This is just my personal guess. Just a little disclaimer right there. That can mean either one of two things. Either they have something planned, but they're not ready to announce it yet, or two, they've considered such a proposal but have not started working on it simply because they want to protect themselves from, in case they make an idea or an event that looks good on paper, which this has happened more than once, it's nothing new, but it ended up turning out to be an absolute flop, or even, in some cases, a disaster. When I say flop, I mean, it looks good, there's not really anything wrong with it, it's just people are not interested in it. So, whatever the case is, it would be interesting to get some more events. And yeah, before I go into the subject of the break mode, one thing I forgot to mention as a comparison, it wasn't all that long ago when people were like, when are we going to get the F100 Super Saver? When are we going to get the MiG-19 Farmer? And they said that they've been testing it, but they're not sure how they're going to be able to balance it, not just with the other jets, but also balance the air-to-air missiles, because they're, as one historian put it, they're missiles, not hittles. So how would you balance that? But long story short, they ended up figuring it out. So maybe the same is the case for the game modes. We'll just have to wait and see. And regarding the break game mode, I'm almost out of time, so I'll try to sum this up as quickly as possible. Basically what the break game mode was, you would capture a point, and once you captured a point, it would create a new respawn, and you would basically advance further up. That's basically how it would work, but it created a number of problems, because if somebody captured your base, then new respawns could be placed right behind you. And then you would have to deal with enemies spawning behind you, basically. All in all, it just didn't really work out to its potential, but I think it could have been fixed. It just, I don't think they had the interest to try to repair it. But anyway, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are enjoying the video so far, and I hope you found this video helpful in regards to events, and once again, about repair costs. I also hope you enjoyed this gameplay. I certainly had a blast doing the custom battle event, and I'm really curious as to what the next one will be. Definitely looking forward to the next one. But anyway, that is it for today's video. Have a great day. Stay safe out there. See you next time, and peace out.